Translation. Understanding that he was remembered by Lord Krishna while quitting this world, Vidura began to cry loudly, overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love. Please repeat. Understanding that he was remembered by Lord Krishna while quitting this world, Vidura began to cry loudly, overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Vidura was overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love when he understood that Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thought of him at the last moment. Although he thought of himself as insignificant, he was remembered by the Lord by his causeless mercy. Vidura accepted this as a great favor, and thus he cried. This crying is the last word in the progressive path of devotional service. One who can cry for the Lord in love is certainly successful in the line of devotional service. This is the end of chapter 4, so we are reading text 36. I'll read the Sanskrit in translation. Kalindya kativishidha ahobir varatarshava prapadyatha sosharitam jatra mitra suto munihi. Translation. After passing a few days on the bank of the river Jamuna, Vidura, the self-realized soul, reached the bank of the Ganges, where the great sage Maitreya was situated. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, fourth chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Vidura Approaches Maitreya. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Sunyavari Paschathyadeshatarine Vanchakalpa Taruvyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyavacha Paditanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. Atmanam Chakuru Shrestha Krishnena Manashekshitam Dhyayam Gate Bhagavate Ruroda Prema Vivalaha. Understanding that he was remembered by Lord Krishna while quitting this world, Vidura began to cry loudly, overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say that we should not try to see Krishna, but that we should try to behave in such a way that Krishna would like to see us. It's quite a bold statement. So Krishna is a person. He explains in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 8, 9 ways how to think of him. One of them is he's always a person. So what does it mean to be a person? I remember when I started reading Prabhupada's books and I read the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I had trouble accepting that, because I thought whether he's not God, and if there is some God or something called God, it's just an energy. Although I was raised in Catholic school for 12 years, I think that was my frustration with the lack of philosophical explanation of who God really is. So here the chapter is ending, and the historical context is that Vidura it's coming forward to find someone who's going to instruct him in Krishna consciousness. Now, as we understand, the Bhagavatam is the expansion of the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita has how many verses? 700. Exactly? few around, more or less. 700 verses exactly. And the Bhagavatam, how many verses? 18,000. So that's around 25 times bigger, right? So the Bhagavad Gita is quite concise. But what's the importance of the Bhagavad Gita? That the Lord talks about himself, right? Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavatam, it's mostly spoken by devotees about Krishna. Correct? Right? So which one is more powerful? Huh? Which one is more powerful? Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam? Huh? Both. Okay, you safe answer. Actually, Bhagavatam, it is said that it's higher. Huh? Why?
Bhagavad Gita explains how to live this life, whereas Bhagavatam is more on how to actually live the body, live this world as well.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Yes and no. The Bhagavatam, or the essence of the Bhagavatam, it's the questions that Parikshit Maharaj, who was about to die in how many days? 7 days. So he was about to die in 7 days. I mean, the body, let's say, because we don't die. That's Bhagavad Gita. And he asked the Guru, Sukadev Goswami, and also he asked the sages. You know, there were some sages there. So he asked the questions twice, just in case. And what were the two basic questions? How to live and how to die. How to live and how to die. That's all what we need to know, right? How to live and how to die. Because materially, the direction is mostly how to live. And to put it simply, how to make money, right? That's why you go to school and universities and all that. And all what we think when we're studying is, what I'm going to do with this, right? How much money I'm going to get, which profession should I choose so I can get a lot of money, you know, depending on our tendency, nature, capacity. And then we can live peacefully, right? That's the thinking. Right? But hardly anyone thinks, I'm going to die. Right? No one thinks like that. Rather, it's something that you don't think. You push away that sort of thought. Otherwise, you become depressed and pessimistic about life, etc. So that's the essence of the philosophical discussion that takes place in the Bhagavatam. What do I do with my life? So, in this case, Vidura approaches Maitreya, or actually it's about to approach, and then they talk. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna to find someone that he can learn from, right? He tells him that. Where is that verse? You know the verse? 434? Brahmachari should know everything. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshinaha. Darshina means you can see, right? So when we come to see the Lord, we say, come and take darshan, right? Darshan means vision. Also means understanding. Sometimes explanation, because it helps you to see things as they are. So going back to the statement that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, used to say, what was the saying? I'm just trying to keep people awake. What was the saying? That, yes, don't that Krishna wants to see you. Right. So Krishna wants to have darshan of you. if you behave properly. Not you, every one of us. So that is the interaction. Right? So how to behave, how to be, how to feel, how to desire, it's explained in the Bhagavatam. It is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Right? Where is it mentioned? These books are for reading, Srila Prabhupada said. It's not only for distributing. Right? Devotees here in New Govardhana, I see all the time your videos on YouTube that you go and do Harinam and they distribute books, right? In Surface Paradise and other areas of this region. But Prabhupada used to say these books are not only for distribution, but also for reading. So we are meant to be reading these books. It's not a torture, it's not an imposition, it's something that it's good. No one has to convince you much to go and take prasadam, correct? Isn't it? There's no seminars going on about how to take prasadam. You just go, ring the bell, clap, 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 right? And fill your plates, in my case, 2 or 3 times. And because it's natural and it fulfills you. So the idea of reading these books, it's like it fills the heart. Bhagavatam says repeatedly, Janatma suprasidati, Jayatma suprasidati. This is a line that we find in the initial verses of Bhagavatam. It fulfills the heart. So, back to the context of this verse. Here, Vidura has been instructed, this is the end of the chapter, and he has been instructed by Uddhava to go and take lessons from Maitreya. And some of you who have been participating in these classes or watching them on YouTube, the narrative is that Uddhava is representing Krishna. And he even looked like him, right? That's the description. He was so beautiful that he even looked like Krishna. Right? A very intimate servant of Krishna. But now let's remember, Krishna at this point in the chronology of the Bhagavatam, he's already gone. He already has gone back to his own abode. Krishna swedamapagate dharma jani divisa. Now that he's gone and he has taken religiosity, spirituality, knowledge, everything with him, there is something that is left behind. Right? And what is that? The Bhagavatam. So when Krishna goes, the Bhagavatam stays. Right? And what is the importance? We were saying, what is more important, the Gita or Bhagavatam? We may say both, as Mate say safely. That's good. Because in the Bhagavad Gita, why I say what I said? In the Bhagavad Gita, for example, Bhakti is mentioned. Correct? Which chapter? 6. Is that a guess? Wrong. There's something mentioned, but where Bhakti is mentioned, not the Pandits at the back are not allowed. That's cheating. Where Bhakti is mentioned in the Gita, we have to read the Gita. Huh? Chapter? Bhagavad Gita is like a mountain. You know, you have mountains here. So imagine one of those mountains, and the peak of the mountain, it's the middle chapters. Chapter 9 and chapter 10. In chapter 9, which is called most confidential knowledge. Right? The most confidential. What is the most confidential knowledge? Bhakti. So Krishna talks about bhakti, mentions about bhakti in chapter 9. And why did I say 2 peaks? Because in chapter 10 we find what's called the Chaturshloki, or the 4 verses which are the essential verses of Bhagavad Gita. And in those verses, 3.5 of those verses are dedicated to the devotees. And Krishna says there, Madchita Madgata Pranam. They live, they breathe, for me. I mean, if we translate that literally. Matchita madgata prana, bodayantash parashparam. They're always talking about me. They're always relishing my glories. Like that. So in the Gita, bhakti is mentioned. But in the Bhagavatam, bhakti is exemplified. That's why Bhagavatam has that, it's like the cream. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam. Of all the fruits of the Vedic literature, this book is the highest. Phalam. Phalam means fruit, right? Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam. So, what do we find in this fruit? Aste? What do we find in this fruit? I'm sure you all have. Anyone anti-fruit here? Anyone that hates fruit? Sometimes I have found people that have that. What's your favorite fruit? Think of your favorite fruit and think of the experience that you have every time you buy that or you bite that fruit. Huh? Lord Chaitanya used to prefer mango, is that correct? From what we hear? Some say that Krishna's fruit was, which one? Chiku, right? Anyway, so you may have your favorite fruit. So every time you buy that fruit, something comes. You know, the texture, the flavor, etc. So the Bhagavatam is like that. So every time we open this book, it's like when we bite our favorite fruit. Now, the difficulty here is that some of us don't have a taste. I remember Kurma Prabhu, the famous cook, ISKCON cook, when we were spending some time with him in Perth. He will cook his preps and then he will ask us to taste. But then he will say, you have to eat it like this. Mix, first you eat like this, or it has to be cold. And, you know, me, ignorant, I just want to eat. I don't care, you know. He says, no, you first eat this, then you eat it with this, you put a little bit of this, like that, you know. There's an art, there's a science, or there's a process how to relish Bhagavatam. So what happens is that in the Bhagavatam, those Bhagavat devotees are presented. And Uddhava is one of them. Vidura is another one. So when we read about Vidura or Uddhava, then we learn how they relish that Bhagavad Katha, which is Krishna Katha. And if you notice here, you say Bhagavate, right? Bhagavate, the word is there. And that Bhagavate is translated as, who remembers? Of the devotee. So the Srimad Bhagavatam means the beautiful description of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his devotees. That's what it is. The Bhagavatam, it's mostly about devotees sharing their realization about Krishna. That's the beauty of the devotees. Now, we may say, that unless he's a great soul, it's not worth of investing our time to listen from him or from her, right? So when Srila Prabhupada started his movement in 1965, and when things started taking off in 1966, there were 7 devotees in the temple. I think there were 6 prabhus and 1 Mataji. And then it happened that things were organized in San Francisco. Mukunda Maharaj and others were opening a temple. So Prabhupada was leaving after 10 months or so that Prabhupada has been there every day giving classes, cooking, lining up for the bathroom, right? Cleaning pots and cleaning after the festival, Prabhupada himself, right? So the time for him to go to San Francisco came. So when he was about to go, the devotees felt, like lifeless. Like, how are we going to survive? We are babies spiritually, right? All of them maybe around 20 years old or so. So they asked him, Prabhupada, how are we going to carry on, with the program like you have established? And Prabhupada counted, 1, 2, 3, okay, you're 7. Each one of you give class each day. Very simple. Including the Mataji, including the lady. And I heard also and read different things. One lady, Govinda Dasi, I think. One time Prabhupada asked her, go and give class. Because Prabhupada was meant to give class. But he had to do something, I don't remember exactly. And so he told, you go and give class. And all the devotees were expecting Prabhupada to come. So she felt very shy and nervous. And sometimes there are people who can pass out just when they have the task to do public speaking. Sometimes speaking in front of public, right? I have seen people getting rashes and sometimes hyperventilating in workplace and at uni, and people had to go and drink water and breathe because they cannot, take it. It's too much. I think there are some studies that, the first fear of human is death, and right close to it, it's public speaking. So this lady came and asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, how I'm going to, give Bhagavatam class in front of the devotees. And Prabhupada said, I'll tell you a mantra. I'll tell you a mantra that if you recite it, then everything will manifest, just like a magic mantra. So then the lady came close and then says, yes, Prabhupada, tell me the mantra. And then he said, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. And this mantra, you can find it here. Where is it from? It's a Purana. I forgot the name of the Purana. It's the first mantra that we find in the introduction of Srimad Bhagavatam, which means that I am blind by the darkness of ignorance. By the mercy of the spiritual master, my eyes have been opened, and now I can see. How do you say seen in Sanskrit? Remember we mentioned? Darshan, yes. And that's the whole point. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, don't try to see the Lord. Try to act in such a way, behave in such a way that the Lord wants to see you. Can you even think that that's possible? I mean, really. Do you think that Krishna will at some point want to see us, or me in this case? Do you think? Yes? Hopeful? Optimistic? Yeah? So this is Bhagavatam, that we become transformed like a touchstone by the agency of these devotees. Their lives are here described by other devotees, right? The devotees describing the life of other devotees. Here are I think 3 simultaneous descriptions, right? Who's describing this pastime between Vidur and Maitreya? Those who are studying Bhagavatam. No one? Sukadev Goswami is telling Parikshit Maharaj, right? But then the sages are asking Sutta Goswami. So it's like simultaneous, repetitions like that. And it's all about the devotee. This is what is a devotee. And why is so important to know about a devotee? Because only a devotee can show us Krishna. Without the devotee, we cannot see. We are blind. Om Jnana Timirandasya. I am blind, I cannot see. There is something quite interesting that I found. It's called colorblind. You know about this? Colorblind. People can see in black and white. They cannot see colors. Quite an interesting phenomena, condition, right? So you can see things, but you cannot distinguish much in terms of colors, and therefore you cannot appreciate. Right? You cannot appreciate as much. There's a lot of studies around that. Now there are operations and lenses and things that are happening. So in the same way, in this material world, we have eyes that do not allow us to see Krishna. These eyes and all these senses are materially meant to go elsewhere but to Krishna. Therefore, we implore the mercy of the spiritual master and Vaishnavas so we are able to see. So Vidura is approaching Maitreya. What for? Why is he approaching Maitreya? Right? We need to think why these things are happening so we can go deeper into the meaning of these verses. Why is Vidura approaching Maitreya? You have been hearing this class, some of you, most of you, for many days. Why is he approaching Maitreya? What does he want?
Wants to hear what Krishna said at the end.
He wants to hear what Krishna said at the end. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, that's part. There's one simple answer to both those questions that I mentioned before. How to live and how to die? Serving Krishna. Thinking of Krishna. That's a very complex question. Very simple answer. You know how many thousands of thoughts we have a day? 35, okay. 35,000, okay. Safe answers, Mati? How many? Many. Lots. Right? Lots. I don't know how they count it. I always puzzles me how they do these studies. But psychological studies, they say that we have 60 to 80 and even more thousand thoughts a day. All right? That's a lot of thoughts, right? But Krishna makes it very simple. What does he say in the Bhagavad Gita? The one thought that can give us all perfection? Think of me. Think of me. Think of me. That's it. One verse. Krishna. Think of me. Manmana. Huh? Just think of me. Yoginam apisarvesam matgatena antaratmana. Within yourself, think of me. That's it. Simple. The process is quite simple. Prabhupada used to say, simple for the simple and crooked for the crook. Right? So this is the idea that these great souls are presenting here. Arjuna asked in the Bhagavad Gita several times to Krishna, how is a devotee? How is a transcendentalist? He asks the characteristics. Chapter 2, text 54. Chapter 14, text 21. Several times he asked this question, what is a devotee? Okay, a devotee is so exalted, so advanced. Only a devotee knows Krishna. So who is a devotee? Right? So that is described in the Bhagavad Gita. In essence, a devotee is someone who renounces, someone who fixes mind, someone who is not disturbed. So many. It's an entire chapters practically. Chapter 5 is all dedicated to describe a devotee. Why? Why that description is there? Because if we have the intention, if we have the initiative to become a devotee, then we need to learn what Krishna says of what is a devotee. And he says it theoretically, right? It's theory, what he describes in the Gita. But in the Bhagavatam, we find the example. We find the name and surname, Prabhupada says. It's not someone that is able to renounce, someone who's able to overcome the influence of desire, someone this, someone that. One who, you read chapter 5, it's only 29 verses. Just read it one after another. It takes you less than 10 minutes, right? But then you don't see that person. You don't know about this person's behavior and interactions. So that's Bhagavatam, and that's the example of Vidura. Now, the whole thing is just starting, because the next verse, the next chapter is called Vidura talks with Maitreya, and it goes on like that. Chapter 3, Canto 3 is, how many chapters are here? 33 chapters? Something like that? Yeah? So, this encounter between Vidura and Maitreya, it's quite significant. And we have several encounters like that in the Bhagavatam. The famous ones, Sukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj. Right? The whole first canto is basically dedicated to teach us how to approach a spiritual master, how to approach a spiritual life. The whole 19 chapters of the first canto. Because when Parikshit Maharaj approaches Sukadev Goswami is at the end. That's the title of the 19th chapter, the end of the first canto. Is finally, Parikshit Maharaj is about to die. This is a question. What would you do if you have 7 days to live? Any thoughts? Huh? I mean, we need to think these things. You don't have to tell me, but it's just an internal exercise. What would you do if you would have 7 days left? Don't answer. It's just private, But what will we do? Where do we go? What would we say? What would we think? This is the message of Bhagavatam. Now, we may say, I'm not so philosophical, blah, 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 kids, work, responsibilities, mortgage, whatever. Just one thing. Simple. Think of Krishna. That's it. Think of Krishna. Now we can elaborate. Wait, I don't know Krishna, and I don't know how to think of Krishna. Okay, learn from someone who knows Krishna. Learn from someone who thinks of Krishna. When they asked Prabhupada, who is the real guru? He said, someone who thinks of Krishna 24 hours a day. I remember when I read these things first, I thought, this is just too much. This is fanatism. I don't want to accept this. Right? But it's true. We see that the devotees go to bed and wake up and dream of Krishna or serving the spiritual master. That's the thing. Because otherwise, what do we dream of? How to make money, how to enjoy, how to make it easier for me and my loved ones. Me, mine, I, like that. That's Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam explains that. But for Vidura, he was so absorbed in Krishna's thoughts that Krishna reciprocates. And what is the important thing? Is the translation here? What is the important thing of this? Who remembers the verse? We read it 2-3 times. What happens with Vidura here? What's this scene presenting? What is he doing in this verse? What is he doing? He's crying. Yeah? He's not only crying, he's crying loudly. Huh? Crying loudly. Overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love. Imagine how beautiful this is. How many stupid songs about love are out there? Millions. But how beautiful this song is. Overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love. Why? Why was he crying, and why was he overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love? Why? Because Krishna remembered him. Imagine, he was such a special soul, such a special devotee, that Krishna, at the time of leaving this world, he thought of Vidura. Huh? Imagine. Can you imagine that? It's even hard to imagine. We can say it mechanically, but... So this is Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam, there's a pastime in the Chaitanya Bhagavata or Chaitanya Charitamrita. I forgot the details. But is it Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he fell in ecstasy and asked Gadadhar Pandit, where is Krishna? Remember that pastime? And Gadadhar said, well, Krishna is in your heart. So what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will start doing? Ripping his chest. Right? I mean, we have that famous pastime of Hanuman. I like that one. They said, with Sita and Ram. And they say, oh, he's in your heart. Why you're lamenting so much? Then he started ripping his heart. Right? And there's another pastime also of Hanuman that I think he asked Ram, correct me if I'm wrong, I heard it many times, but I don't remember exactly. They asked why Sita has this red dot, no? Sindhu, no? What is it called? And then the answer was, because she's faithful. She's faithful to Ram. Oh, that's the wife. That means, okay, that's it. I belong to my Swami, my husband, right? So then Hanuman thought, oh, really? So he went and grabbed a whole bunch of kumkum, right? And started putting it over. That's why you see Hanuman red. When you go to India, you see this color or red. It's all red. So loyal to Ram? Yes, I put all this, So that's the mood. It's like a child. One time they asked Prabhupada, how can we be like you? He was asked that several times. And he said, be like a child. It's like a child, simple, He's just in ecstasy. He's just, he knows father is there, mother is there, food is there, sooner or later, right? And everything is taken care of by the parents. So in the same way, Krishna says, Aham bija pradapita. I am the Supreme Father. And that, therefore, in the Gita, he says, Machita makata prana. My devotees are always thinking of me, only thinking of me. Their life is devoted to me. Their talks are devoted to me. Everything is about me. Why? Because that reciprocation, right? That reciprocation. And what is that reciprocation? I want to end with this and think of any good questions, otherwise I'm going to ask some questions. What is that reciprocation? Bhakti, yes. We think of Krishna, right? That's the instruction that Krishna gives us. That's the instruction that Sukadev Goswami told Parikshit Maharaj, right? That's the main instruction. Think of Krishna. And what would be the reciprocation of that? Thank you. Krishna will think of you. Krishna will think of us. Whoever thinks of Krishna, Krishna says, Jayatamam praparyante, that I will reciprocate. So if we think of Krishna, Krishna will think of us. Is that a fair deal? Yeah? Krishna is a person. Right? So, that happens even between us. I'm nice to you, then you are nice to me, then I do a favor for you, I smiled at you, so naturally you'll reciprocate. It's the human nature, shall we say. So Krishna is a person, and Krishna thinks about you also, if you think of him. Right? That's the idea. So Vidura is coming to talk to Maitreya, and this closes this chapter. A new chapter is going to be open. And this encounter is happening. It's a very important moment. And I just wanted to read these two verses so we understand the mood of the moment. Understanding that he was remembered by Lord Krishna while quitting this world, Vidura began to cry loudly, overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love. After passing a few days on the bank of the river Jamuna, Vidura, the self-realized soul, reached the bank of the Ganges, where the great sage Maitreya was situated. So it's like maybe it took a few days for him to settle. Right? When you're emotionally upset, stressed, disturbed, right? If you take some time, generally that settles. Studies say 72 hours and you are sort of back to normal, right? If you are really, really disturbed, 72 hours and you will be somewhat not like at the height of your emotional state. I mean, that's materially, of course. But Vidura stays some time on the bank of the river Jamuna. What do you call? Regrouping. You know, sometimes you say, I'm going to regroup my thoughts. I'm going to gather my thoughts. The self-realized soul reached the bank of Ganges. So he kept traveling to see Maitreya. And then another chapter will begin. Vidura's talk with Maitreya. Okay? All right, so I'm always instructed to finish somewhat earlier. So we're going to stop here. Any questions in regards of this? Yes? Pause. Because they want to, yeah.
Hare Krishna, Pandal pronounced. So Vidura, he was an incarnation of Lord Yamadharmaraja in the form of, he comes as a Shudra only and as a Vidura in this Mahabharata story. So he is already elevated soul.
Mm.
So like just can you briefly explain about his pastimes with Krishna?
I'm not an expert. Jamaraj, yeah, it's a whole pastime. I've heard it here many times. I saw it on YouTube. But he seems to have committed what we can call a mistake, and he was cursed. There's many pastimes, but anyway. The problem is that sometimes in material life, sometimes we commit mistakes. And because he committed a mistake, another great sage cursed him. Says that you are not better than a Shudra. Shudra generally means someone who doesn't have much understanding, and therefore his behavior, it's not ideal. So that's a Shudra. So you are cursed to born as a Shudra because you are acting like a Shudra, and you are giving instructions because he said, this should happen. And anyway, some complaint was there. But the important thing is that Jamaraj comes to be part of the pastimes of Krishna because it is explained in the Bhagavatam that these great souls, only great souls can actually perceive the magnitude or the beauty of Krishna. They can really understand, the gift, the treasure of Krishna Bhakti. And then you need a special soul to be able to be the recipient like that. This is, has many answers in the sense that not anyone can just come in like that. We can see that the close associates of the Lord in his incarnations are very special people. Great, sometimes devatas, sometimes plenary portions of Krishna, Shakti-Avesh avatars, empowered jivas, sometimes like Narada Muni and others. And their pastimes or their previous lives show that they were great. And sometimes, apparently, they committed a mistake. In fact, the Bhagavatam, we may say, is a book of mistakes. Right? Parikshit Maharaj, he committed a mistake. He went and put a garland, right, to a sage. When a great personality comes, you see there are 4 personalities coming. So we invite you for the month of January, is it, that they're going to be here? Yeah. So when they come, the basic thing is that we garland them. So Parikshit Maharaj, it's going around his kingdom, which is the whole world. And then he sees this sage. The sage is immersed in meditation. And although the sages are respected by the kings or by the kshatriyas, by the warriors, in the same token, the priest, the sages, need to offer respect to the king, because the king, it is understood as the representative of God on earth. That's explained in the Gita as well. So this sage ignored, because he was absorbed. He didn't realize that he was there. So what happened, Parikshit Maharaj? What did he do? So then he said, okay, is that the respect that you give me? Okay, I'm gonna offer you some respect. I'm gonna offer you a garland, like Mata is doing so carefully the garlands there. So imagine, you prepare as a garland a dry snake or a dead snake or something of that sort. And then he took it with his sword or however and put it over the great sage, right? And then the son of that sage cursed Parikshit Maharaj. And then he said, you may be killed by a flying snake, Takshaka, in 7 days. That's it. It's very interesting how Prabhupada explains those purports, because he said that Parikshit Maharaj had the potency to stop that curse. Imagine if you have a toothache or stomachache, and you have the power, you have the pill or the powder or whatever it is to stop it. You think, no, I'm going to put up with this toothache, right? Because if I go through this, I will think of Krishna. I will be more advanced. Imagine, every time I have a toothache or I have some ache, my wife knows, so I'm just like a crybaby, can't take it, right? So Parikshit Maharaj didn't do that. He took it. He accepted it. He said, this is Krishna's mercy. And this will bring me closer to Krishna. So he accepted it. And then he did what Krishna says that one has to do. He looked for someone higher than him and accepted him as a spiritual master, Sukadeva Goswami, and he achieved perfection. Sukadeva Goswami, it is described, achieved perfection for talking about Krishna. Parikshit Maharaj achieved perfection for, what did he do best? Hearing. So we can be perfected by smelling the flowers. Every time you smell the flowers, tat britya gatrasa asparga sangama. By touching the devotees, by tasting tulsi or prasadam, right? We can achieve perfection by all means. So even though we may not be in a perfect state of mind, like Jamaraj, who committed a mistake, look who he became, Vidura. That Krishna liked his attitude so much that he thought of him at the time of death. Right? Same Parikshit Maharaj, and we can go on and on and on like that. All our acharyas, they went through a lot of trouble. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, there was an attempt on his life. Srila Prabhupada, 2 heart attacks, 1 stroke. So many things, like we can go on and on and on. But I think it suffices to say that what we need to get from this book, from this fruit, when we give it that bite, when we hear Bhagavatam, is that relishable sweet taste of bhakti is there in the life of the devotees. And if we approach the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavat with humility, we have hope that one day we will also think, oh, this is amazing. This Krishna Katha is amazing. And if we can have that taste at the moment of death, then what will happen? Krishna may think of us as he offered in the Bhagavad Gita. Tisham aham samudartha mrityu samsara sagara. I will personally take you from this ocean of birth and death. So that's the perfection of life. And that's what we read Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada ki, Gantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur.